Good evening and welcome to the 2020 Cranston Democratic Mayoral Primary Debate. I'm Dan Kittredge, editor of the Cranston Herald. Thank you for tuning in tonight and to the Cranston Public Library for hosting us and co-sponsoring this event. We wish we could be doing this with an audience, but we're glad to be able to provide a chance for voters to hear directly from the candidates. We turn our attention tonight to the race for mayor and the three Democratic candidates, Maria Bucci, Adam Carbone, and Citywide Councilman Steve Stykos. Welcome to all of you, and thank you for agreeing to participate in tonight's event. The format for tonight's forum will be as follows. Candidates will be invited to make opening statements of a maximum of 5 minutes. I will signal candidates once they reach the time limit. Following the statements, I will ask the candidates a series of questions, both submitted from members of the public and developed by the Herald staff. Most of the questions will be general in nature, and some may be directed more specifically toward one of the candidates. For the general questions, we will alternate between the candidates and provide each with 2 minutes to respond. If there are specific questions, we will provide a 3-minute response for the candidate being asked, and the other candidates will be given 2 minutes to address the question. As we near the end of our time tonight, we will be providing each candidate with the opportunity to make a closing statement of a maximum of 5 minutes. With that, we'll begin the opening statements, and based on a randomized order determined before the event, Maria will go first.
Thank you to everyone who's watching tonight, and Dan for putting in the hard work to make this debate happen. I also want to thank Adam and Steve for joining me. Of course, we cannot forget the generosity of the Cranston Public Library and the Board of Trustees for hosting us. Thinking back to my time on the council, I did not expect to be running for mayor. From my first days on the council as a young woman with ideas on how to improve Cranston, I heard, that's not how we do things. And on too many of those issues, we are still facing the same problems of 15 years ago. Cranston deserves better. And this year, we have an opportunity to set a new direction. Last week, I shared my vision, Cranston 2021. In it, I have sought to raise some of the important issues I have heard while meeting and talking with voters in each ward of the city. You can read all the details at my website at bucciforcranston.com. It includes my commitment to making our city an inclusive place to live, work, and run a business. Our workforce must reflect the diversity of our city. And I discuss my commitment to invest in our schools and teachers. This is not only in our school buildings, but also investing in the professional development necessary to deliver a quality education during a pandemic. I also describe how I am committed to having a clear communication between the public and City Hall. That includes having an updated website that will let people file permits online and being accountable with transparent information for how the city runs. Effective communication also requires us to have our materials available in different languages and having full-time Spanish-speaking staff. We must and we need women and people of color in executive positions throughout the administration. Tonight, I look forward to sharing more about these ideas. Being mayor is about more than a set of policies and proposed ordinances. It's about fighting for the city's success every single day. The first months of this campaign were committed to hearing from the voters. I came into this knowing that I need to learn from the people I am seeking to represent. Our city government needs to hear from you and be engaged with you. Your voice counts. That is why I've spent every day meeting with residents and business owners to learn about what is important to them. To be an effective mayor, we must find a way to work together. We must find a path through divide in our politics, because only together will we all succeed. I have been so inspired by the people who have dedicated themselves to this vision. They have donated an amazing number of hours dropping off campaign literature, knocking on doors, and making phone calls to share what this campaign means to them. This campaign is not about Maria Bucci. It is about the people of Cranston. If we had an audience tonight, I would introduce you to Kelsea. As soon as I put my name out as a candidate for mayor, Kelsea reached out, and since then she has been a part of the team. She introduced me to her neighbors and knocked on hundreds of doors. She called residents all across the city. She filmed a video saying how this campaign represents the empowerment and voice of women. That passion for this work inspires me. I know that I need to deliver for Garcia and each and every person in our city, because together we will succeed. She's just one of the people that fueled me through some of the most challenging months we've had faced together. We are still in a difficult time where we have missed many of those things that make us happy. The threat of coronavirus is keeping us from activities we used to take for granted. We are missing out on such regular things, like having our kids in schools, graduation parties, weddings, backyard barbecues, or simply embracing our friends and loved ones. I know the pain that people are feeling. The actions we all take together now to prevent the spread of the virus are what will let us bring back some of these experiences. I must continue to ask that we all do our part to prevent the spread of this disease. We can support our friends and family by sharing and staying in touch. We can support our businesses by buying locally. We are all in this together. I look forward to continuing the discussion here tonight and back out in the community again tomorrow. I know that with strong leadership, our best days are still ahead of us.
Thank you, Maria. Councilman Stichels.
I'd like to thank the Herald, the library, and all the viewers who are watching. I think these forums are important, and I hope we have more of them to talk about city, state, and federal issues. I'm a citywide councilman. I've been on the city council for 10 years. Before that, I was on the school committee for 10 years. I was born in San Juan, Puerto Rico. I grew up in upstate New York. I went to college at Bates College in Lewiston, Maine, where I graduated with a degree in history. I moved to Rhode Island in 1984. I'm married to Christine Herbert, who's a physician, and we have 2 children, both of whom graduated from Cranston East and who are now adults. I've worked in a variety of jobs. I've been the admissions director at Dorcas Place, which is an adult education center that provides courses so people can get their high school equivalency exams or learn English. I was a union representative for the Amalgamated Clothing and Textile Workers Union. I was a freelance writer for newspapers in Rhode Island, including the Cranston Herald, the Block Island Times, the Providence Phoenix, and other newspapers. And for the last 11 years, I've run a vegetable farm in Warwick that grows vegetables for food pantries in Cranston and Warwick. We use organic methods. I run the farm, and I have a team of terrific volunteers who work with me. I'm running for mayor because I've been in city government for 20 years, and I've seen a lot of things. I've followed policy and attempted to shape it. And I want to very much support the public schools. In the last budget, I offered amendments that passed, that provided $45,000 more to our public schools. Another councilman, John Dunnigan, offered an amendment that added 25, so we were able to increase the additional funds to the school department from the city by 17%. That came from moving money around from one budget item to another, not by raising taxes. The year before was about $35,000 that passed in budget amendments. I also, 7 years ago, the federal government cut money to the Head Start program. I met with CCAP, the Comprehensive Community Action Program, and worked with other members of the council as the chair of the Finance Committee, and we put together $50,000 to keep that program intact, because that was a program that helps the most disadvantaged children in the city and gives them a little boost, so when they can start kindergarten, they're a little bit ahead of the game and hopefully can handle the coursework. I've also been very active in environmental issues. I started community gardens at Edgewood Highland School and at Arlington School, where people can get a plot to grow vegetables or whatever they would like to grow. And on the November ballot, there'll be a climate change bond in the city of Cranston that I wrote, and the entire city council co-sponsored, urging voters to approve $5 million in borrowing to lower Cranston's carbon footprint and lower its consumption of fossil fuels. This will be done by solar panels on roofs, LED lights, insulation on buildings, new windows, things like that. So we'll do two things. It will cut our carbon footprint and it will save us money in the long run. So I would urge you to vote for that bond in November. And finally, I've been an advocate for careful spending of city tax money. When I was first elected to the school committee, the Orchard Farms Elementary School was being proposed. And I was the only elected official who said, this building is not going to be built with this amount of money. And I turned out I was correct in that matter. So I look forward to this discussion, and thank you for watching.
Thank you, Councilman. Adam, we'll go to you.
My city has a first name, it's C-R-A-N-S-T-O-N. My city has a second name, it's R-H-O-D-I-S-L-A-N-D. Put that all together, and what does it spell? The greatest city in all of Rhode Island. Okay, I'm proud of myself for mustarding up the courage to say that. Anyway, I'd like to thank Dan Kittredge and the Cranston Public Library for putting this on. And I thank you for giving me a fair shot when most look the other way. With that being said, my name is Adam Carbone and I'm running for mayor of Cranston. Who am I? I'm an entertainer. I'm an actor, a comedian, a film producer, a nobody. But I'm going to be honest, modest and fair as mayor. Why am I running? Well, the city, frankly, is in a pickle. As mayor, I can turn all this around and have fun while doing it. This is what being mayor means to me. It means leadership, it means transparency, it means authenticity, it should mean no empty suit, it should mean no political correctness, it should mean no false promises. To me, a politician's signature move is whispering sweet nothings in your ear and not delivering on the words they say, which is why I'm proud to say I'm no politician. I'm just a guy that happens to be running for mayor. And when I'm mayor, I'll work my buns off for you. I'm going to bring Adele to the gazebo. I'm going to extend the half-off app hours at Applebee's. I'm going to tax babies. I'm going to ban pasta salad from the city, and I'm going to fill the Bud Long pool with Jell-O. How, you may ask? Just vote for me on September 8th, and we'll talk about it later. A little bit about Adam's origin stories. I lived in Knightsville most of my life, and I'm born and raised Rhode Islander. I was actually born right in the Knightsville gazebo. I come from a very talented and big Italian family. My grandfather was Rolando Petrella, a staunch, proper Italian man who took pride in his family and took his work very seriously. We probably wouldn't see eye to eye today, but boy oh boy did we admire the heck out of each other. He immigrated to Rhode Island at a young age and started his radio program, The Voice of Italy, connecting Rhode Islanders back to their roots in Italy for generations. My mother has been a teacher most of her life, teaching kids important life lessons they could use throughout all walks of life, like not showing up to a debate in a hot dog costume. Sorry, Mom. But all joking aside, she always told me to do whatever I wanted to do in life, and here I am doing it. My father also shared these views. He was a karate instructor and entrepreneur with big ideas, up until he unfortunately passed away in 2018. He always encouraged me to be myself and be unapologetic about it. And now here I am doing just that. He was very supportive of this campaign when I told him what my plans were. He knew it was going to happen because when I say I'm going to do something, I do it, including marrying the love of my life, Carmela, exactly 1 year ago today. It's our anniversary. She's a great girl and also a chicken nugget. Some of you all might judge me for that, but this is 2020 and love is love. Anyway, I'm sure most of you know me as the bagel and cream cheese guy, which is true. I am a bagel and cream cheese guy. I'm making my own party, and let me take a moment to explain what the Bagel and Cream Cheese Party is. A real people's party, a party of unity, smashing the duopoly, even though the political elite of the duopoly is more like one party with two faces that is currently in the process of destroying the country. But We need to reintroduce ourselves to who we formerly were before politics divided us. And I know I'm running as a Democrat, but you should all know I'm a libertarian at heart. But unfortunately, with the way politics work today, if I ran libertarian, I wouldn't have as much of a voice as I did now. I'm hoping with what I'm doing, it's going to open everyone's minds a little bit about the way we vote, about the way we see things. We are so divided as a nation and a city because of the harsh party lines. And I think now, more than ever, we need a political outsider to bring change, true change, to the city. I feel like in these present conditions, the absurd is the only thing that makes sense. And when we are at our lowest point, we are open to the greatest change. The key to life on earth is stopping and smelling the roses and enjoying the small moments. Whether you're laughing with me or laughing at me, at least you're laughing, because I think we could use a good laugh right now. So with all that being said, I say give this comedian a shot. And to quote Jordan Peterson, comedians are like the canaries in the coal mine of life, which is why authoritarians are so intent on silencing them. The jester in the king's court is the only person allowed to tell the truth. The king who can no longer tolerate his jester has become a tyrant. We need to laugh at both the stage of the world and at ourselves, and in doing so, it allows us to acknowledge our flaws while also transcending them. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. To move on to our questions, I want to start where I began last week during the Republican debate, because I think this is probably the top issue on the minds of most voters. Dan DeCesaris asks, if elected mayor, how do you plan to navigate through the economic devastation caused by COVID-19 without raising taxes? And Maria, based on the order we determined ahead of time, we'll go to you first.
Yeah, so I think we all can agree that we have some really troubling times ahead. We really still do not know the economic impact that coronavirus has had on the city. So we know we have a big responsibility ahead of us. Our main focus needs to be our businesses right now and what we can do to provide them financial needs they're going to need to get through the winter months. Right now, they're relying on outdoor seating. And what are we going to do, you know, when it's 10 degrees outside? So we want to make sure that we have these programs in place, the revolving loan fund, we have the CBGG funds that we can put in place. But when I'm mayor, these will already, we'll make sure we have these up. Some things I do mention on my website, I don't know if you had an opportunity to go over it, is education, a valuable education right on our website. So where do they get the funds? How do they apply? Are they going to be accepted if they do apply? A lot of people don't even know where to begin to get the funds. So I think it's going to start with education, making sure we have the funds available.
Thank you, Maria. Adam.
What I would do is kind of start from the beginning. Actually, before the beginning, I would go back in time and kill baby COVID before it became what it is today. If you couldn't do that, I would build an antimicrobial or antiviral moat of hand sanitizer around our city. But if I can't do that, then I would start doing things like give us more tax incentives for small businesses. I would relook at the Costco option because everyone's kind of writing it off, and I think that it would bring big business to us and help us rebuild our economy. But what is noticeable to me is that there was no plan B, and I wish there was, because I think even if we moved it somewhere else, if it's not in that spot, I think that would really help us recover. I think as far as going back to school, I think we need to play it safe and do distance learning as much as possible. But one question I do have is the funds that Gina Raimondo had for COVID relief. I don't know why she's not releasing them, but I think if we had access to those, that could really help us strategize and rebuild.
Thank you, Adam. Councilman Stichels.
I think the first thing that the next mayor is going to have to do is sit down and get a handle on the financial situation of the city. That means figuring out where the state aid is. We don't know what state aid is now. The legislature is unlikely to pass a budget until late September or October. We also don't know about federal funds. So that's another piece. Are we going to have access to federal funds? So those two pieces plus we need to, the mayor will, I think there'll be some kind of a major financial crunch, and the mayor will have to look at cutting spending and have to look at where is the school department with their decision that they made today to not bring kids back into school but go virtual? Is that costing more than expected? Is it on budget? Are they off budget? Because the school department is more than half the city budget. So that's a key portion of the solution. And so they could do cuts, and then another option would be there is a surplus of $18 million that the city has, and obviously we don't want to spend that, because then the next year you don't have it to spend, but it might be a helpful cushion that we could use financially. So those are the steps that I would take to avoid some kind of a random tax increase. But another thing we don't know about is the car tax. How is that going to be settled? So.
Thank you, Councilman. On a related question, the City Council on Monday approved a resolution urging the state to fully fund a $4.1 million increase in state aid that has been thrown into limbo due to the crisis and the lack of an approved budget. The issue of school funding has also been the subject of some debate among officials, and whether the state or the city gets more credit for the funding that the district has enjoyed in recent years. Given the strain facing the city and the state, how would you ensure the district is adequately funded going forward? And Adam, we'll go to you first.
I would start by cutting unnecessary expenditures in the budget. And this was the budget before pre-COVID. And I noticed a bunch of line items that seemed excessive. And I think if we go into line items like that, line by line, we can free up a lot of money. I think we could almost cut the $400 million budget in half. And I think by doing that, we need to funnel more money into schools. Because I think right now, they're really underfunded, and they always seem to get kind of they drew the short straw usually. And I think we need to be paying attention to schools the most, because that's our future, and the kids are our future, and I think the teachers should start getting paid like it's a profession and not a hobby. And to most teachers, it's a calling, and I think they need as much money as possible, which they're definitely not getting right now. So.
Thank you, Adam. Councilman Stichels.
The question was how will you ensure that the schools have enough money?
Yeah, how would you ensure the district is adequately funded going forward, given the strain that the city and the state are facing?
And the COVID. I think we need a report from the superintendent and the school committee as to how COVID changes, how distance learning, because of COVID, changes their financial needs. $4 million is a lot of money to come up with. I will say that I hope the legislature starts looking at the public reimbursement of charter schools. Cranston now pays $1 million, it's projected, to Achievement First. So and there's other money being sent to different charter schools following the kids. And I think that's a luxury that we can't afford anymore. This disbursement of money, millions of dollars to charter schools. So I look at that. And as others have said, you've got to also look at the expenditures in the school department. And I would look at whether we have excess administrators would be first, because if you start cutting teaching positions, what you're really doing is increasing class size, and that is not a good idea.
Thank you, Councilman Moran.
Our schools are the foundation to our community. We need strong schools now more than ever to keep our economic engine going, or people will not move here. They will not stay here. We need to make sure that we use every avenue to make sure we are receiving the federal funds in this city that we deserve. We cannot stop. We have to work with the governors. We have to work with our congressional leaders. We have to make sure we are getting federal funds for the city that we deserve.
Thank you. To move on, to stick with schools, Governor Raimondo has called the push to reopen the state schools a moral obligation, although educational leaders in several communities, including Cranston, have expressed serious concerns about the readiness for that. Should Cranston schools begin the year with distance learning? And Councilman Stichels, will start with you.
Well, the superintendents of, I think it's 7 communities, including Cranston, Warwick, Lincoln, Woonsocket, the superintendents and the union presidents from those cities sent a letter to the governor today informing her that they were not going to be having classes, in-school classes, that they were going to go virtual. And it's an intelligent letter that outlines why, and that to make the schools safe is, they say, just about impossible between now and when school would open. So I think they've made the right decision. The key thing to me was talking about the ventilation systems, that the Center for Disease Control recommends certain standards for ventilation systems to deal with the COVID virus, because I think we all know that open air is much safer, and obviously ventilated air is better than stagnant air. So the schools just can't be brought up to that standard in a few weeks. So I think the superintendent has made the right decision. I think everybody's going to be safer. The teachers are going to be safer. The bus drivers are going to be safer. The kids are going to be safer. So I would disagree with the governor's moral imperative statement, and maybe when she looks at that letter, she'll agree that maybe that was a bit much.
Thank you, Councilman. Maria?
I think the first priority is the safety of our teachers and students. We have to make sure we get this right. But I am out there campaigning, I'm knocking on doors, I'm hearing from so many parents and teachers. They don't know what they're doing. They don't know how to plan for work or who's going to watch their children. So I think people are just looking for the answer. What are we going to do? When is school going to start? Let's put that plan in place, whenever it may be, and let's make sure that we have what everybody needs. I know some of the concerns are some students are in special education, and they're not receiving the education they deserve or need. We want to make sure all students are receiving at home or in school quality education. So we need to make sure that those services are available to them. We want to make sure that internet is available to all students. We want to make sure if they need lunch or food that they have it available. So whenever we open, it's going to be the right time, but let's put a set plan in place so parents can plan, teachers can plan, and we can do this right.
Thank you, Maria. Adam?
I am going to echo Stevie and Maria and say that our schools need to be modernized and catch up with the rest of the world. And until then, I don't think we are fully ready to open, so I'm glad that the superintendent made that call, because I don't think we're ready. And we have to err on the side of caution, and because safety's first. And just because the kids might be less susceptible or not, it's not as great of a risk to them, they can still be carriers and spreaders of it. And I think they can bring it home to their parents and also the teachers too. So the teachers are kind of forced to go into teaching. I don't think that's fair to them, because a lot of them are older as well. So I just agree with distance learning until we can figure out a solid plan, for sure.
Thank you, Adam. Maria, we'll go to you for this next one. The Costco Cranston Crossing proposal at Mulligan's Island has become a very central issue in the campaign in the last few weeks. Marcia Fowler asks, how do you see your role in fostering development that is welcoming to residents and will also create a tax base?
So I voiced my opinion on this several times. I think the Costco project is so important to our city, especially now. We're hearing about economic development, right? It's 365 jobs. It's 500,000 in revenue to the city every year. Let's find a place for Costco's. Let's find a place where they fit. I think it's just a great benefit to the city. I had the opportunity to meet with neighbors in the Oak Hill Terrace area, and I understand their concerns. Mulligan's site is not the proper location for this particular project. The size, it's too big. The traffic, it doesn't work there. But it is a great project. So that's what I talk about with being a great leader. It's communication, working with the developer, working with the neighbors. Let's work together and have this project stay here in Cranston. We're going to need this more than ever, so it's really important. I walked some of the backyards. Literally, the loading docks would be right where this wall is. It's unfair to young families that purchase a home, want to raise their family in a nice backyard, and now they have a loading dock. So I understand the frustration, but I also believe we do need this project in the city.
Thank you, Maria. Adam?
Hot dog, what a question. I would say it's direct competition with Reno Rama because they sell low-priced hot dogs at Costco, so I am against it. But in general, I stand by the proposal of Costco coming to Cranston, and after seeing the walkthrough and people's reaction to it, I believe the current proposal of location for Costco is problematic. But it's potentially beneficial to the community. And I think right now it seems like it's being pushed, so I think they're listening to the people, and I think that's what should matter most. So until we figure out a solid plan B, which I wish they came in with, but until we figure that out, just leave it alone for now. And it also squash local business too. We have to think about that. Like, let's talk about Dave's Market, Whole Foods, and squash them. We're kind of the direct competition to them as well. So we have to keep that in mind. Besides the neighbors, also small businesses it hurts. So leave it alone for now, I guess.
Thank you, Adam. Councilman Stengel.
I'm opposed to the Mulligan's Island project. It is the opposite of smart growth. There's 7 to 8 acres of parking lot and this monstrous building on open space. I called Grow Smart and asked staff there what they thought of it, and they said it was the opposite of smart growth, and that's not what we should be doing for economic development in the city. What we should be doing are a variety of measures. One thing that Councilman John Dunnigan and I are proposing is a bid discount that would give local businesses and businesses owned by people of color a discount on their bid, so that if they came close to the winning bid and they were a local business or business run by people of color, they would get that bid. So we keep the money in the city rather than send it off to some out-of-state monstrous corporation. That's one thing. I think we need to look at the business centers that are close to housing, such as Knightsville and Rolfe Square, and encourage more business development in those areas so that people can get to where they're shopping without driving a car or by driving a short distance. Another thing that I proposed, I invited the principal planner of RIPTA to come to a city council committee meeting. We talked about a cross Cranston bus, which would encourage people from both ends of the city to use places like Knightsville and Rolfe Square for their business.
Thank you, Councilman. Our next question will go to Adam. Last year's debate over solar farms in Western Cranston highlighted the tension that can exist between preserving open space and promoting renewable energy. As mayor, what would you do to keep Cranston's green spaces while making its energy use greener?
Hot dog, what a question. I would say, I think we need more solar panels and more windmills. It's strange to me how people are off-put by the windmills, because I think renewable energy is the way of the future, and eventually if we don't get there fully and we don't do it quick, we're gonna be in trouble. So I would push and try to get more areas that we could put more solar paneling and windmills. I think they're very important. I think they look cool too. Everyone's like scared of them. I think they're really cool.
Thank you, Adam. Councilman Stengel.
Yeah, I think solar panels belong on the roofs of buildings, canopies over parking lots, and on brownfields. They don't belong in farmland and forests, which is where they've been placed because of the ill-advised decision of the mayor and city council, the majority of the city council, to allow huge solar farms in residentially zoned areas. I was the lead opponent on the council of those projects. Unfortunately, we lost the vote 5-3 that allowed them. But I would support programs like Solarize Cranston, where there are incentives for people to put solar panels on their homes. And I also sponsored legislation that was taking advantage of legislation passed by State Representative Art Handy to encourage businesses to put solar panels on their buildings to reduce their use of energy off the grid.
Thank you, Councilman. Maria?
We have to promote responsible green energy. I know we've seen some renewable energy sources go up in the city without the knowledge of residents, which I find to be terrible in the city. I mean, we see the windmills. I think people just want a voice and where they can put the solar. So we hear a lot of things during election time about renewable energy. But we could do things right now, or we could have done things over the past few years. We could start by putting solar panels on top of our school buildings. We could start by putting solar panels in empty parking lots. We have large industrial buildings throughout the city. Let's give them a tax incentive to put them on the roof. I mean, there are creative ways, but we always hear about it during an election time, and then when the election's over, nothing happens. But I want to make it clear that I believe in responsible green energy where all neighbors have the same.
Thank you, Maria. To stick on the topic of energy and conservation of the environment, Councilman Stichels, it's been a decade since the floods of 2010, but the effects of climate change continue to be felt, and parts of the city still experience regular flooding issues. What would your administration do to mitigate and prepare for the effects of climate change?
Well, the first thing would be hopefully the passage of the climate change bond that would reduce our contribution to the problem. To mitigate the problem is the flooding issue is basically that we have paved over so much of the watershed, the Patuxent River watershed, that if there's a lot of rain, which the studies show that there'll be more rain as the climate gets warmer, and the rain incidence will be heavier. So you get more rain more often and more of it when it does rain. So that's going to tax things like the stormwater, storm sewers. I think we need to take steps to remove pavement where we can, so the rainwater goes into the ground. There's the city tree planting program, which I am the sponsor of, which has planted over 200 trees in the city. We had a celebration this year of the 200th tree. So we need to improve the tree canopy because trees will soak up the water and they'll reduce that sudden flush of water now when there aren't any trees. There's nothing to stop the runoff. I think we have to take steps like that, and we have to work with the state and with the Department of Environmental Management as they give us guidance in that area.
Thank you, Councilman. Maria?
So flooding is a big issue in the city. It's been going on for many years. When I was on the city council, we had put together a flood commission, and we would meet and try to come up with creative ideas. And some were as simple as easy as cleaning out the drains, the storm drains, or going in, and we have machinery in the city, trucks that vacuum, go in and clean out the drains. It's simple as that, to just clog drains. I went to a neighborhood the other day up in Edgewood, and they're at the bottom of a basin, and the water just flows there all the time and piles up. It's only because of a clogged drain. Let's get the trucks out and make sure we're cleaning out the storm drains. Second, we need to incorporate green infrastructure. I've talked about that a lot. That will promote help with flooding, it will create jobs, and it overall will be amazing for the city, and it's something we need to stop. And I will put that plan together as soon as I'm in office.
Thank you, Maria. Adam?
I have two simple solutions for that. I would flatten all the roads to level it with the rest of the flat earth. And then 2, I'm already moving the moon out of orbit, so I propose we move the sun out of orbit as well, or at least push it a little further away to stop global warming. Okay.
Thank you, Adam. Maria, we'll go to you for this question. The pandemic has created economic hardship for many Cranstonians and Rhode Islanders. Even before the crisis, the state has faced a shortage in terms of affordable housing. How would your administration approach this issue?
Again, we had a commission, a housing commission, that has not met in I don't know how many years, but I could not even find it on the website. We need to work with community leaders, landlords, banks. There's programs going on all around the country that are doing matching funds, so cities and banks are working together and creating these affordable housing. Everybody deserves a home of their own. And we can make that happen, but we have to work together to make that happen. We actually have to meet on the Housing Commission. So we need to put these back in order, we need to put them back in place, and we need to have the community involved to make it happen. You have to work at it. It doesn't happen on its own.
Thank you, Maria. Adam?
I say we have to get affordable housing everywhere in the city, not just Eastern Cranston. And I feel like, at least in the campaign trail, a lot of people felt that the only affordable housing is basically in the ghetto. And I don't think that's I think that's a fair assessment, but I don't think that should be the case in our city. So I think we need to look at other areas of Cranston that we can place more affordable housing.
Thank you, Adam. Councilman Smith.
I think one thing that's important is that housing be safe. The state has a very good lead law, but yet every year 25 to 30 Cranston children enter kindergarten lead poisoned. And lead causes brain damage, learning disabilities, and costs the school department money down the road as the school department tries to address those problems with individual children. The state housing code requires that if you have a house built before 1977, an apartment to rent, you need a lead safe certificate. And the building inspection department, last time I checked and asked, they were not asking apartment owners if they had to provide that certificate when they go in for a building permit or when there's a complaint about an apartment that for some other reason, like a leaky roof. So they should, if I was mayor, they would be doing that. They'd be demanding the lead safe certificate, and if the people didn't have it, then they wouldn't get a building permit. So that's the first thing, is we've got to make the existing housing safe. And then I think we have to work with Rhode Island Housing and groups like SWAP that are headquartered in Providence, and put together proposals of housing that fits in a neighborhood, smaller scale housing. I think we also need to encourage housing on the second story above a retail. So that could come with, say, a project in Rolfe Square, where you encourage a storefront business on the first floor, and then the second and maybe third story, you have apartments. We have to look at that small scale of projects.
Thank you, Councilman. Adam, we'll go to you for this next question. The Diversity Commission on Monday presented survey results to the City Council that indicate a majority of Cranston residents agree that people of color in the city face barriers in terms of access and opportunity. A set of short and long-term recommendations were also presented on Monday. Emily Brady submitted a question that speaks to this. She asked, around the country, people are more aware than ever of systemic barriers to people of color. What are your plans to promote equality or equity in Cranston, and what can you point to in your own experience that shows you know how to take on this important challenge seriously?
I would say that our leaders in each area of power need to go out of their way and find people of color to be in positions of power and positions less than that. And I think we have to strive to do that, and if we don't do that, I think it comes across as unequal, and especially in today's times. I think we do need a more diverse city hall, more diverse unions, more diverse teachers in the classroom. And if we don't go out of our way to find qualified people to do those jobs, then I think that it's very insensitive. So I think that we have to go out of our way to find people of color.
Thank you, Adam.
Yeah.
Councilman?
This is a huge problem in the diversity of the city's workforce. The city's population is now 28% people of color, according to the census, and yet only 3% of the city's full-time workforce are people of color. And that 3% figure has not improved in 12 years. So we need to, as Adam said, we need to go out and actively recruit. We need to go talk at churches and community groups that have a lot of people of color in them. And we need to deliver the message that los trabajadores en Cranston deben reflejar la población. Y entonces toda la población quería y sería parte de la ciudad. And we have to make sure the workforce reflects the population, and so the population feels part of the city. Right now, there is only one person in City Hall who speaks Spanish, yet 10% of the Cranston population speaks Spanish. If you go into City Hall on the right day, he might be there to translate, but he only works 3 days a week. We have to also get people who speak different languages in City Hall so that if someone goes in and they can't speak Spanish, they can't speak English very well, and they want to start a business, we want that person to start a business. So we need someone there who can explain the process in the language that they feel most comfortable in. So those are a couple of things that I think we should do.
Thank you, Councilman. Maria?
Could you repeat the question?
The question was, Emily Grady asked, around the country, people are more aware than ever of systemic barriers to people of color. What are your plans to promote equity in Cranston, and what can you point to in your own experience that shows you take this important challenge seriously?
I think we all agree, over the past few months, what we're seeing on TV and just this past week, it's horrifying. And I was very disturbed, and we need to make changes. We need to make changes now, and they can be done now. We need to work with our Black community leaders. It's time that our City Hall represents the communities in the city, and we need to do this together and work together. We all talk about it, but we need to make the changes, and it's long overdue. We could start putting in anti-racist curriculum in our schools, start in our schools, start early. In our police department, we need to change, I'm sure this is a question coming up maybe later, but I'll go into it now. We hear defunding the police. I understand the frustration. I'm frustrated. I can't imagine how everybody feels. We need to make sure, we're lucky here right now. We're lucky that our police department is not reflecting the rest of the country. We want to make sure that never happens. We want to make sure we have annual de-escalation training. We want to make sure that we have annual anti-racism training. We want to make sure that we have mental health evaluations. We want to make sure that when people act out or are being disciplined, that they're held accountable. We need to make these changes. In our police department, we need to make the changes in City Hall, and we need to do it now.
Thank you, Marie. Our next question will go to Councilman Stichels first. Another question from a reader. Robert Wilson asks, how would each of the candidates handle existing zoning issues that are detrimental to surrounding neighborhoods? Specifically, how will they enforce existing ordinances when surrounding businesses are not following the law?
I will enforce the law. And I've tried to do that on the city council, but the mayor is the one who enforces the law and sets the tone. We have, people make complaints now about building code violations, and they disappear into Never Never Land. You don't hear back. So what I proposed and convinced the council to pass was that if the building inspector issues a notice of violation, that go online. And so as a citizen, you can track what's happening with that problem business or problem property down the street. You can see, are they getting fined? Is it going to municipal court? What's happening? Right now, you don't know. That passed the council, and it was vetoed by the mayor. And we didn't have the votes to override the veto. But I would put that in place so people could track things. And I would deliver the message to the building department that we want the law enforced. If the complaint is without justification, then the person who's complaining needs to be told that quickly, and the business or the homeowner left alone. But if it's a violation, we need to go after it. And we have situations in this city where there are businesses operating in residential zones, and I presented it at council meetings, and it has not been acted on by the administration.
Thank you, Steve. Maria?
I would have you repeat the question because we go off topic, but I'll take from where Steve left off. We have to enforce. We have to enforce. When I was on the city council, we worked with our municipal judges to make sure that these violations were being, they were being enforced. But our comprehensive plan has to reflect our communities. We are growing residential properties. We continue to add more homes, but our comprehensive plan has been the same. I believe it's coming up soon, but let's do it sooner. Let's get it done now. Let's make sure our comprehensive plan is reflecting our city of today, not of 10 years ago.
Thank you. Adam?
Speaking of ordinances, I just want to bring this up. 8 years ago, Steve Stikos of the City Council proposed an ordinance to allow chickens to be kept in the backyard areas by residents. And this ordinance was also vetoed by Mayor Alan Fung. And I just want to ask him a question that, what about the ducks? Because I'm endorsed by the Mashantucket Lake Duck Union. So why are you all for chickens and not ducks? And also enforce the ordinances. And I think as mayor, it's easier to do that. But also the ducks.
Thank you, Adam. In the interest of Councilman Stichels, any response to that?
Well, the ordinance that I authored to allow backyard chickens was a highly regulated system so that, number one, people could keep chickens in the backyard, but they had to be in controlled, caged environments, and they had to be inspected by the city so that there would not be problems with rats. And there are people in the city now who do have chickens in their backyards, and we need to regulate that so that it does not encourage rats or other problems. So that was the point of that ordinance, which was quite detailed.
Maria, did you want to weigh in any further? Maria, we'll go to you for this next question. And forgive me, I've lost my space a little. We're doing tonight's debate virtually, and since March, public meetings have moved to Zoom. The results have been mixed. How specifically would you as mayor work to make city government more accessible and transparent, particularly given the likelihood that the usual in-person meetings won't be possible for a while?
Well, I always say we're in the 21st century. We should have information at our fingertips. We should not be waiting. Sometimes I try and download an ordinance or something, you can't even find it. So we want to make sure that just starting with our website, that we have information available to everybody and in different languages. I have a lot of friends that do not read in English, and we want to make sure that everybody has access to the information available. We do see that the Zoom is going better than it was great in the early stages, but like I said, we're in the 21st century, and we truly need to bring our city hall up to the 21st century standards.
Thank you. Adam?
I feel like City Hall in general is very intimidating, at least to a person that's not in government. It feels very unapproachable, and not everybody there, but people there too feel like kind of unwelcoming. So the first thing I would like to do is open up a throne room, which there'll be set hours in the day that people can come and want to go to City Hall. If it's a cool experience, you get to go talk to the mayor personally and voice your questions or concerns or comments about the city. Yes, it's a little bit theatrical, but I think it's very important that people feel like they can talk to the mayor personally. with questions and concerns. And I think that the Zoom calls are really great right now, and I think that every council meeting should be open to the people. So, yeah, I want to make it a more open and welcoming place, right?
Thank you.
Yes.
Councilman?
Yeah, every council meeting is open to the public unless we're talking about a lawsuit or some personnel matter. So the entire city council, Democrats and Republicans, welcome people to participate in the meetings. And there are times at the council meetings to speak to items that are on the agenda, and then there's another time when you can stand up and, say whatever you want about whatever you want for 4 minutes. So that's already in place. I would establish office hours for the mayor where individuals or groups of individuals could come in and we could talk about problems that are of importance to them, and we could try to solve them, work on a solution. As I stated before, I think diversifying the city's workforce would be a big plus. If you go in the post office, there are all kinds of people working there. If you go in a bank, there are all kinds of people working in there. But if you go in City Hall, it's a very limited segment of the population that's employed there. And the same goes for the public schools, that they need to diversify their workforce and have more people of color working in all types of positions. So those are 2 things I would do to make the more accessible. I think it is difficult with the COVID virus, but hopefully that will get solved by the infectious disease experts, and we'll be able to get back to public meetings where people can exchange opinions with their elected officials.
Thank you.
May I retort real quick?
Well, we're going to you for the next question,
Oh.
so let's, if you want to weigh in on this. The pay raises took effect in January for the next mayor and city council. During debate over the proposed repeal of those raises this year, the possibility was raised of the next slate of officials effectively repealing them by declining them or returning the amount of the increase to the city's coffers. Have you considered whether you might do that?
Absolutely. Just to retort that real quick, what sounds more appealing, office hours or throne room? That's all I got to say about that. And as far as the raise for the mayor, I would totally decline it and half the mayor's pay if I was mayor. I don't need that much money, so I would half it, giving more money back to taxpayers.
Thank you. Councilman?
I would decline the raise. I was opposed to the raise when it was proposed, and I'm still opposed to it. The mayor's salary is $83,000 a year, and I think most people in Cranston would be really happy to have an income of $83,000 a year. So I think that's plenty, and I also think it sets a tone for the entire administration, that the purpose of the administration is to serve the public and not get a big paycheck.
Thank you. Maria?
I wouldn't have asked that it would have went to the ballot for the voters to decide. I don't understand how 3 of the candidates running for mayor are voting on a pay raise. I think the simple solution was to put it on the ballot, and it's been a discussion for years, and let the voters decide if they thought the mayor needed an increase.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman Stichels, we'll go to you for this next one. The city has twice adopted ordinances aimed at curbing roadside solicitation or panhandling, and I believe the 2017 measure remains the subject of ongoing litigation with the ACLU. This issue hasn't been as much at the forefront lately as it was in the last cycle, but as mayor, would you continue to pursue this case in court, and do you have any thoughts on this issue more generally?
Yeah, just want to add one thing on the last issue. The proposed raise for the mayor brings the pay from $83,000 to $105,000. So it's not a little raise, it's a $23,000 raise. The panhandling. I voted against the panhandling ordinance. It came to the city council when the Democrats were in the majority, and we defeated it. The Republicans won the election, and they were able to pass the panhandling ordinance. I think if you read the precedents on this, that panhandling or asking someone for money is equivalent to speech under well-established Supreme Court precedents. So this panhandling case, which is now, the ordinance is stayed pending the outcome of a trial in federal district court, which could then be appealed to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the First Circuit, and could then be appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court. This is an incredible waste of money. This is hundreds of thousands of dollars that will be wasted for really no reason at all, because the case is a loser. If you want to read the case in Portland, Maine, their ordinance was declared unconstitutional, and it is far less restrictive than the one that was passed in Cranston. So that would be, I should have mentioned that on ways to save money right off the bat when the next mayor takes office, is do that and save hundreds of thousands of dollars that we're going to go to lawyers that should go to children in the schools.
Thank you. Maria?
So I will be a mayor that has solutions. And I want to know, why do we have panhandlers in the city of Cranston? Why are we not helping them? Why are we not making sure they have jobs? Let's do what we can. I don't think that solves the problem. Let's try and figure out why they're panhandling. I know we have the Hamilton House on Howard Ave, and I know it's a problem for a lot of the neighbors. Because what happens is they leave at 7 in the morning, and they're asked to come back at 7 o'clock at night with no job, nowhere to go, and no reform. I would, as mayor, work with the state to make sure we have a program in place at the Hamilton House where they would get the help they need. Let's help people. Let's not make an excuse why they're on the streets begging for money. They shouldn't be, not in this city. We're a beautiful city. Let's help them. We all want to help everybody. Let's help people. Let's get them the help they need so they are not hanging out on the street. I feel very passionate about it. Might not be the right answer, but I feel strongly about this. We need to give them the reform and education they need to get off the streets.
Thank you. Adam?
I think Maria has a really good point. I would also push more homeless shelters for people like this. And there's a lot of empty buildings that I think we can occupy and facilitate to be homeless shelters, so we don't have to build things from scratch. Also, the fact is that they are on the street, and as Steve was saying about the hundreds of thousands of dollars being spent to keep the ordinance in place, I think, imagine giving that money to the panhandlers, there goes the problem. But the ordinance itself, I'm against it, because just put yourself in the homeless people's shoes. I don't think anybody wants to be there, and if anybody got to that point, you'll do anything just to get by. So I don't think that ordinance is fair or right at all. So I am totally against it.
Thank you. We have covered a lot of ground, and I do have one question each that was specifically tailored to each of you. So I think I'm going to move to those. Maria, we'll begin with you. The state's in the midst of an application period for 6 new compassion centers in Rhode Island. And just last week, there was a pre-application meeting about a proposal in the city. Given that you work in this industry, what can you say to folks who may be wary of these kind of operations in Cranston?
I understand. I have not seen, I know they have designated certain areas where they would approve the state had done this, where they would approve compassion centers. I don't know where they're approved already. I know there was maybe one in Westerly. They want to scatter them throughout the state. I think if they're run well, it shouldn't be a problem. It would be revenue to the state.
Thank you. And keeping, I don't know if either of, Adam, would you like to respond to that?
I think more compassion centers in Cranston would be great. I think weed should be totally legal. I think the science has proven that it's not harmful to us at all. So it's kind of strange why it's still illegal. And I think in Cranston specifically, I know it goes statewide and things like that, but I'm just totally against weed not being legal. But I think we should have more compassion centers here. And a question for Maria too. I know she's has the Slater over there. What if bringing that one to Cranston That could be. I don't know. Can't you? It's in front.
Councilman.
Yeah, I think people have reason to be worried about the traffic and the hubbub that comes with the marijuana dispensary. And I think that's why we have these processes at the city government. The zoning ordinance that was passed on marijuana dispensaries was very restrictive to industrially zoned areas. So there are very few places where you can open a dispensary right now under the zoning code.
Thank you. Adam, for you, I've spoken with you previously and met you, and I believe your intentions are good. And I'll admit I've gotten a kick out of your, some of your videos and your posts on Facebook. But at a time of such anxiety and uncertainty for the city, what do you say to voters who view your approach and your candidacy as a distraction?
I don't think it's a distraction. I think what it's doing is, if anything, bringing eyes on Cranston mayoral primary. When most people focus on the general election, and I think there needs to be more eyes on the primary instead of just looking at the parties. So I think each of our opinion here is valid. And I think by doing something like this, if anything, it's, look, oh, there's a hot dog guy, and people are going to watch this, and people are going to listen to what these wonderful people have to say. So I think it's actually more important now than ever. And when I started doing this, it was pre-COVID. I was thinking about this in 2018 and Fong won governor, and that didn't happen. But I shelved this plan. And once COVID happened, I thought to myself, oh, this might be a little insensitive right now. But then I totally had a 360 of thought, thinking that this is actually it's perfect right now. It's exactly what we need right now. It lightens things up and it gets everybody talking. So I think it's important. So I disagree with anyone saying it's a distraction. If anything, it's the opposite.
Councilman, did you want to weigh in? Maria?
I like the hot dog.
Thank you.
This way we go. Councilman Stikos, to you, you've been critical of the Fung administration, the planning department, for being what you say is too accommodating to developers. What would you say to voters who might view you or fear that under your administration it would swing too far in the other direction?
Well, my criticism of the planning department has been that it hasn't been open. The ordinance that allowed solar farms in Western Cranston was essentially tucked into this very ornate thing that was presented as, oh, just a few administrative changes. And if you live in Western Cranston, one of the things that I amended that, the council agreed with my amendment, it would have allowed doggy daycare in 2-acre residential areas. So you can imagine buying a house in Western Cranston, and then your neighbor starts a doggy daycare center, and all you hear all day is barking. So we stopped that. But that's the kind of thing that I find bad in the planning department, that we weren't told that. We had to dig that out. So that's one thing. As far as people's concerns, I am not against development, but I would like to see the planning department, who are professionals, they go to get master's degrees in this area, is I'd like them sitting down with developers and taking the public side and molding projects to make them more palatable to the neighborhood, rather than just passing them on without any changes. One thing that I suggested, the Chase Bank, which is going to be located on Atwood Avenue, they needed a zone change. And I suggested, well, gee, you're going to have solar panels on your roof to generate electricity and make Cranston a city, a greener city. Well, they said no. Well, that would have been better done, that suggestion, in the planning department, saying, you guys want a zone change, what are we going to get back for it as a city? Can you put solar panels on the roof? A corporation like Chase Manhattan, that's chump change to them, solar panels on the roof. So that's what I think we need in the planning department, is something that's balancing the neighborhoods with development. And also going out and actively trying to preserve open space. The city has not applied for an open space grant from the state since 2010. We're the second largest city in the state, and we have not gotten an open space grant since I believe since the Cullinan project, if you can remember that one.
Thank you, Councilman. Maria, did you want to weigh in on this? Okay. Adam? Thank you. Maria, we'll go back to you for this question. You served previously on the city council representing Ward 4. We'll go to everyone on this. I know, Adam, it's a little out of your experience, but from your time on the council, is there a vote that you were most proud of and experienced, and was there a vote or an action that you most regret?
So I really liked working with the community. We were gonna have neighborhood meetings. When I was on the council, the blasting was an issue, and I kept in close communication with the owner of that project. It's no longer the same owner, but just reaching out to him, and he was willing to come to the meetings, he was willing to come to neighborhood meetings, and he set up a time, he would call the neighbors when he would blast. So I was proud, and then I also was there for the flooding. And I'm proud of the communication that I have with the residents in the city when I was there. We had a lot of flooding issues in 08, 06, we had a few of them. We had 08, 10, and the Amanda Court area, those homes were underwater. And I was there for them. I told them where to go, where to get funds, where to go in the city hall. It was the open communication that I loved. So I was proud of all those things that I was able to do, and then I was able to work with the local youth sports, CLCF, making sure that they had what they needed for the kids, because I think it's so important that we have those activities for our children. We need to keep them active. So I say the communication I'm the most proud of. I was there when we built the new police station. At that time, our officers were in the police station on Atwood Avenue. Atwood Avenue was full of asbestos. It was leaking, it was moldy, it was horrible conditions for anybody, never mind our police officers. So I was happy to be the deciding vote on the police station that is now on Garfield Ave.
Thank you. Next, Adam, did you want to weigh in on this?
Yes, since I don't have experience in the city council, maybe I'll just use this as an opportunity to be proud of the endorsements that I have. I just have a few of them. The Mashantucket Lake Duck Union, the Eatry Square Spaghetti Boys, the Lampstand Union, my own chipped tooth, a little bit of leftover orange juice, blueberries, the Endorsement Union, the little half and halves you get at the breakfast places, the Cow Cud Union, and the Cold Spaghetti Union. Thank you for those endorsements.
Thank you, Adam. Councilman Stieglitz.
I can't think of a council vote I regret. I do regret on the school committee voting to renew the superintendent's contract. I was torn over it, and I felt that she was dictatorial and not someone who worked well with the city council. And then after that, the school committee was forced to go to court to try to get more money for the schools from the city. And that whole situation was just a failure of government, because the school committee was just, and the superintendent were asking for just too much, an unreasonable amount of money, and city council got really angry over that, and they were at loggerheads. So I really blame her style of leadership, which was, we're for the kids, we decide what's necessary, the council's got to come up with the money. And I think that turned into confrontation, and I'm partially responsible for that, for voting to renew her contract.
In the interest of time, I'm going to try to squeeze in one more question here, and I feel compelled to do so because I received this a number of times, or similar versions of the same question. Several members of the public spoke Monday during the council meeting to express concerns over 5G technology, suggesting it poses health risks and will affect property values. Do you view these concerns as credible, and should the city be doing more on this issue? Adam, over to you.
Yes, I don't trust 5G. It's cool because we have fast internet and stuff, but I think there's not enough research to be putting these all over our city. So I would say we should definitely look into it more and not be so fast with putting all these towers up. I don't trust it.
Thank you, Councilman.
I think the 5G opponents have a very good point that the state legislature quietly passed a bill which eliminated the local community's ability to have some regulation of these 5G units that go on top of the telephone poles and emit radiation. So I agree with them on that far. As far as the safety of 5G, I haven't reviewed the science, and I'd like to hear from some unbiased scientific review. And I am somewhat skeptical of the claims. I remember, as many people I'm sure do, maybe 15, 20 years ago, high tension wires were viewed as a health threat because of the radiation, or the, I don't know the right terms, that they generated. And that came from a study in England that was later proven to be a fake study. So I think it needs to be looked at. The local community should have control over it, but it needs to be looked at with skepticism.
Thank you. Marie?
I would have to look more into it. Yeah, I don't want to give false information. I'm interested myself, so I would need more information before I could answer that.
Thank you all. I don't think I have enough time to squeeze in another one, so I think we'll move on to closing statements so that everyone has the time that we agreed on. Based on the order we determined ahead of time, Adam will begin with you.
Thank you. I come into this race with totally outside views. Views of the disenfranchised youth, views of the ignored citizens of Cranston, people who felt like politicians don't give them the proper time of day. A majority of these disenfranchised people, especially my generation and the generation after mine, wouldn't be paying attention to a Cranston mayoral primary, as important as it is, if I wasn't doing what I was doing. Here's an alarming number. On the last governor's race in the primary, approximately 7,000 people in Cranston voted. That's less than 10% of the Cranston population. Why so little? Are they just waiting until the general to vote red or blue? Don't we think there's something fundamentally wrong with that? Voting blue no matter who, or voting red until you're dead, is the exact mindset we have to lose in our country and our city. And shouldn't this mindset tell you something about our current state of affairs? We should care. We should all care, because what happens today is going to shape our future for generations to come. What's happening right now is good. It's going to get more eyes on us than ever before, and it will echo nationwide. Some of my opponents across the board love throwing out the statement that they're the most experienced, the most qualified. Well, they've all kind of said that, so who's telling the truth? They certainly all can't be the most experienced. Are you lying just to climb the political ladder? Well, I'll tell you right now that I'm certainly not the most experienced, but I'm the most real, even though many of you wish I weren't. Although being as unexperienced politically as I am, something people probably don't know is that I've campaigned for Senator Bernie Sanders. I've campaigned for progressive Democratic candidates across the state. I've campaigned for Republican candidates in Cranston. I've promoted and openly supported libertarian candidates throughout all this. The people that know me, and the people know that I'm open-minded and have so many progressive and conservative friends alike. And I can see past our differences and find the good in everyone. I've campaigned for people I believe in, not parties. So although I'm politically unexperienced, I'm very politically active. I take pride in staying true to myself and never backing down of who I am. To quote Dave Rubin, of all people, you can alter the nature of reality by living your truth and applying it to the world. If you lie, your lies will spread and reality will unfurl into chaos. We are so tribal and encamped on our political ideologies, and the idea that we can come together on causes seems nostalgic. People care so much about maintaining control in a partisan party system that it counteracts the ability for people to govern. We wonder, how did we get where we are now as a city and as a nation? We cannot forget what the system has done to us. what the system has taken away from us? Are we supposed to forget what we stand for? Forget the evils of the system we're fighting against? It's time we open our eyes and see things how they truly are. We need to rise up, and we can start in Cranston. When all this is said and done, I don't want to say I lived a life with regret, and I don't want to say I wish I had the courage to live a life true to myself and not the life others expected of me. As politically frustrated as I am, we sometimes need to take it easy with politics and just live our lives. When we fail to live a life outside politics, we become a slave to it. We are being consumed by the big impersonal stuff that divide us while overlooking all the little things that make us happy and connect us. We need to learn the difference between being politically engaged and politically obsessed. Going back to what my father always told me, there's no need to take ourselves so seriously. Be yourselves no matter the cost, and do it unapologetically. Life is short, and I relish in the opportunity to represent you. And I know my campaign itself may be a joke, but I promise my mayoralty will be kosher. Now I officially declare myself the winner of this debate. Join me at carboneforcranston.com, and thank you everybody for your time.
Thank you, Adam. Maria.
Before I go into my closing statement, I really have to say, I want to thank our teachers. I think they did an amazing job at the last minute during this pandemic. And I know how hard it is. I have 2 sister-in-laws that are teachers that have small children. I truly want to thank you and all of us too. So thank you for your hard work this year. And I want to thank everybody watching from home. I hope everyone checks out my vision at bucciforcranston.com. I believe that you were able to see the differences between the candidates here tonight. In choosing the next mayor, you should know who will work each and every day to deliver results for the city. This is why I decided to run. We need someone in the mayor's office who will fight for the city every single day. It's time for us to open the doors of City Hall and create a transparent and accountable administration that represents all of Cranston, not just the well-connected. We have an opportunity to break from how things have been always done and set Cranston on a path towards resilience and prosperity. There can be no doubt that we are facing difficult times. While some candidates may consider using property taxes to avoid difficult decisions, this is just not the time to talk about raising taxes. We still don't know the true results of the economy shutting down. I know that with strong leadership, our best days are still ahead of us. Right now, we must make the hard decisions and strategic investments that will position us for a full recovery. We need to turn over every rock and exhaust every potential source of revenue. We need to push for the state to keep its promises and fully fund the education formula and continue the car tax phase-out. We will continue to push the federal government to provide additional stimulus funds to respond to the threat of coronavirus and support our residents who are out of work. We will trust the collective strength and diversity of our community to uncover new possibilities for action. We will get through these tough times together. On the other side of this pandemic, we will have a city that is focused on supporting its small local businesses. Our city will continue to invest in our schools and children. What sets me apart from the other candidates is my ability to build teams that will help create effective policies for our city, and my willingness to work hard.
Thank you, Maria. Steve.
Well, thank you to the Herald and to all the viewers and to the Cranston Library for sponsoring this forum. We are in a difficult time with the COVID virus. But I think it's important to know when you decide who to vote for, where that person came from. My grandfather, Stavros Staikopoulos, was born in Turkey, and he was drafted into the Turkish army. And rather than go in the army, he jumped on a boat and he came to America. And he raised his 2 sons. One went to Princeton, the other one went to the New England Conservatory of Music. And I owe a lot to my grandfather's decision to jump on that boat. My mother was born in England. She remembers as a teenager seeing the German bombers flying over her house on the way to Manchester to bomb the factories. And she took, as a teenager, they evacuated the children, many children from England to save them from the bombing. And she went on a ship through the North Atlantic with the German U-boats, with many other children, and they went to Canada for the duration of the war. My stepmother, on September 1st, 1939, when the Germans invaded Poland and started World War II, was a small child in Poland. And she remembers her father getting on a bicycle and going off to his unit in the Polish army to fight the Germans. And my stepfather enlisted in the U.S. Army and was on Okinawa when ready to invade Japan when Truman dropped the atomic bombs on Japan. He was a very liberal person. But I once asked him, do you think Truman saved your life by dropping the bombs on Japan? And he said, yes. So in my house growing up, it was never said, oh, politics doesn't matter. Don't talk about politics. All politicians are crooks. It doesn't make any difference who gets elected. That was never said because the people in that house knew that their lives had been shaped by politics. And the kids in the house also knew that. So I think that the city of Cranston is very much like my family. There are Dominicans, there are Italian Americans, Dominican Americans, Irish Americans, Polish Americans, Chinese Americans, and we're all in this city together, and we're trying to make it work. And we have to make sure that our city has something there for everyone, regardless if they're wealthy or poor, regardless if they're 90 years old or they're 7 years old. And so when you make your decision on who to vote for in the various races, I would ask you to do one thing. Do not judge people by what they say. Do not judge politicians by what they say. Judge them by what they've done. Thank you very much, and I ask for your vote in the September 8th Democratic primary.
Thank you, Councilman, and thanks to all three of you so much for taking part in tonight's debate. I really appreciate it. Thank you to the Cranston Public Library, Ed Garsha and his team for making this possible. Everyone at home, thank you very much for watching. Stay safe. Have a great night.
Thank you.